All right, everybody, welcome back. Welcome back. Socially Connected 360, number 29 is in the house. Hispanic Heritage Month. I got my main man, Jason Romero, lawyer, author, ultra marathon runner. I mean, you name it, has gone through so much adversity and still continues to conquer. Man, we're going to have a great conversation today. Number 29, Jason Romero, starting now.
This kid's going to be somebody better than anybody ever knew.
All right, folks, welcome back. Welcome back. Like I said earlier, SC360 is back, and we're back, and we're bigger than ever. Number 29, I have my friend and someone obviously I saw him on social media, and I'm like, man, we got to get together because his story is just powerful. Jason Romero is in the house, folks. Wait until you hear this. It's Hispanic Heritage Month, so it's a perfect time for this. Jason, how you doing, man? How's everything going? How's Colorado going?
Doing great, man. I appreciate having me on, Luiz, and I was excited to get invited to your podcast. So can't wait to have a conversation.
Awesome, man. How's the weather over there?
It's beautiful. You know, we're just coming out of a balmy summer. I'm born and raised here and not used to these hot summers, but we've just started entering into the fall days, crisp mornings, and perfect for running.
Oh, man. Amazing. Real quick question, Colorado, cycling. How's cycling over there? I'm a big cyclist.
It's huge. So huge over here. We have all kinds of different cycling communities, and there's people who take it, extremely serious. There's shorter distance, there's longer distance, there's everything. Mountain biking is everywhere, and road cycling is everywhere too. Big triathlon community. I mean, we just have a lot of active people here, Luiz. You'll fit in great. Come visit.
I know. I told you earlier in the pre-show that I was talking to my girlfriend, and we got to get over there, man. It just seems so beautiful. And I cycling, obviously climbing, and I'm sure there's mountains and there's hills and there's so much you can get so good at cycling over there. So tell us about you, man. This is about you. I mean, like I said, I really look up to you. This is Hispanic Heritage Month. You're a Latino that we all look up to. You've overcome a lot of circumstance. Tell us about your life growing up. I know there's something that we want to let folks know today, and that is even makes your story even more powerful. You're an author, you're a lawyer, you're an ultra marathon runner, but there's also something else. Tell us a little bit about your life, man.
Yeah, sure. Well, first and foremost, it's not really about me because none of us get through this life by ourselves. The only way we get through it is with a village. And, with me, there's something much larger than me taking care of me and watching over me. So that's number one. But what I've been able to experience in life, I think I have been blessed. I think I have a life and a story like anybody else. I've had, ups, downs, adversity, successes, failures, that type of thing. Kind of what, I guess, interests people in my story a lot is I have this disability. So I was diagnosed at a young age with this degenerative eye condition called retinitis pigmentosa in my teens. And I was told, frankly, I would be lights out blind by the time I was 30, forget about trying to go to school. Nobody in my family had gone to college. My mom told me and my brother, you're going to college, you're going to graduate school, you're going to break the cycle of unemployment, you're going to do something with your lives. And in my early teens, I was told, forget about that. You got this disease and you're going to be disabled. And, I got 5 minutes if you have any questions. And that just,
wow.
I think we've all had these types of circumstances. Like I call them dream killer moments in life. And, they're kind of like when the proverbial, you can't do life. You can't accomplish your dreams. Well, we've all had this experience, but what ended up with me is, as a teenager, and I don't know what you were like, I was pretty ornery, and that was a good thing for me because I didn't listen to this adult. And I went on and I pursued my dreams. I ended up actually getting through college, getting through law school, became a lawyer, went on, transitioned from being a lawyer to a business career, worked with GE for 10 years, ran GE Capital in the Caribbean, worked for, a Western Union, did global operations there and some different stuff. And then eventually my eyesight caught up to me. And that's the crazy part of the story too, because when my eyesight catches up to me, I end up in a deep depression. And as a result of that, I took on a challenge to run across the United States. And that kind of launched me where I'm at now. Keynote speaking a couple books later, and I could never have planned out this life, but I am so blessed to have gotten to where I am with all the ups and downs.
It's just amazing to think that at your lowest point, that you find the energy and find the courage to do something that all of us, most of us, that can, we can see, we have, some of us have some glasses or things like that. But even with all that, the vision and everything, that we wouldn't even think about running or doing ultra marathons or even running across the United States. It just shows the willpower that you have and just the tremendous strength. Where do you get that strength from, real quick? Like, where does that come from?
I want to, let me answer that, but I also want to thank you for noticing a very important point, which was when I was at my lowest of low in life, frankly, when I didn't know if I could go on in life, literally, if I could go on in life, this huge challenge was placed before me and I accepted it and I took it on. That's a piece that gets glossed over in this story a lot. A lot of people think of, they look at the accomplishment or, what gets reported on, some blind guy runs across the US at 2 marathons a day. I mean, yeah, that was a big deal. But the bigger deal, I think, which you touched on is, and I learned, is even when we're at our lowest of lows, even when we don't think we can go on, even when we're bankrupt, when we're empty, when we're hopeless and helpless, we are still capable of our most incredible dreams. That's, to me, if I can share that with my kids, with other people, that's probably the most important piece of this entire story, because I was clinically depressed. I went and sought professional counseling. I was really concerned about my own safety, but I had 3 kids. I was divorced. I mean, I had to figure out a way to go on.
Yeah.
You asked what the motivation was. This, and the crazy thing, with this story is this wasn't even really my dream, if you will. I always say that it was a calling to run across the United States. It's not like, I was, sitting in a depression, laying in bed for 3 months. I'm like, I think I should run from Los Angeles to New York, tomorrow. Yeah, it wasn't that.
Everybody else.
You're right. I mean, I need to be locked up. Probably need to be locked up anyway. But I was depressed. I went to see this counselor in order to do something to get out of my house, to take a shower. I had volunteered at a homeless shelter, and I talked to the executive director. I was like, I got to do something, man. I'm spiraling down. And the executive director, a friend by the name of John Moorhead, told me, come in and volunteer on Thursdays. I went and volunteered. And during one of my volunteer days of trying to help people, who I believe were in a tougher situation than me, they inspire me every day. I had a calling, and I talk about it in a book I wrote. But this came from outside me. It wasn't even like my own thought. It was like, a thought was pushed into my head. I am going to run across the United States. And then all of a sudden I was like, what just happened? I've never experienced anything like it before or since. And I thought I was, going crazy, but I knew it was for real and to happen. And in order to hold myself accountable, I'm a lawyer. I could pick it apart and be like, oh, maybe my sugar level was low, or maybe, something else had happened. I texted my mom immediately. I said, I am running across the United States to hold myself accountable. Like within 30 seconds, she texted back, said, I'm in. And that was the beginning of this, basically what I call like a run for survival. I called it Vision Run USA, but as I describe it now, it was a run for survival.
Yeah. And again, I think, when you are in that moment, and there's nothing, I can't even imagine. There's nothing else. You're just like, the world is closing in on me. It's getting dark. It's going to get dark. And every day you wake up, you're like, it might be a little bit darker, or is it going to, how fast is it going to be? All the things that you struggle with. And then all of a sudden you're like, I'm going to take on this tremendous feat that again, a lot of us would never be able to even fathom with our eyesight, normal. So I commend you on that, man. It's amazing. There's a documentary I was checking out a little bit today. You also did a Puerto Rico run.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Just amazing, amazing, amazing. So you mentioned your mom. Yeah. So your mom says yes. And then what happens? I mean, does she full on double, like just go with you or planning, or how does that work?
Yeah. So what happened is I had this moment or calling, and all of a sudden I'm like energized. I was like, I'm doing this. And it ended up being 18 months from the time that happened until my actual takeoff date. So in between that time, I had to, train up my body to be able to handle this. I had to try to fundraise, which didn't work out so well. Do a website, figure out the logistics, the route, try to get sponsored, like everything that could go into it. And the other thing too is that it's not a race. This is like an expedition. There's not rules for how you do this. It's just going out there and trying to figure out how to do something. Yeah. So all of that took place over 18 months. My mom really, her role that she was going to do was going to be to crew me, basically drive at 5 miles an hour across the U.S. in a sag wagon with supplies.
Amazing.
And I'd run 50 miles and then we'd jump in the van, go to the nearest motel, and then she'd take me back to the start, and then we'd do the same thing all over again until we got from one coast to the other coast. When you ask what my mom's role was, it was everything that I am. Since I was 2 years old, she raised me and my brother as a single mom, working multiple jobs. She taught me work ethic. What she taught me was what I ended up doing day after day there. Just imagine 50 miles on your feet, day after day after day, no days off. That's basically grind. It's work ethic is just, there's times when you don't want to do it. There's times when you don't think you can do it. There's times when the pain is overwhelming, but you still go out there and you do it. And that's what my mom's role was. But that is a lifetime of just witnessing her and what she did and how she lived her life. And then we both went out and did it. The incredible thing is she went out there when, I think she was 69 years old. And for most people, they're doing speed crossings are like 50 miles a day or more. And there's less than 10 that have ever happened in the history of the world. Wow. Mine was one of those. With those speed crossings, people take crews of 4 to 7 people, and you have doctors, masseuses, nutritionists, multiple vehicles, scout vehicles, bicyclists. I had my 69-year-old mom doing all this stuff, and she was running across the road trying not. It was incredible. And it's not like this just happened overnight either. We did so much practice in the interim between the calling that, I had ran 6 races between 600 mile or more plus races from the time of this calling until I took off. One of those was Badwater, which is a 135-mile race through Death Valley in July. You're in the desert. It's 120 degrees. And Mama Cindy, that's what all the racers call her, she's crewing it. We go across Puerto Rico, 183 miles through, humidity and rainforests and beaches and mountains and jungles and, windy roads. Mama Cindy was the crew. We stage our own 100-mile race at a local park with, self-supported. Mama Cindy does it. We go to Greece and do the Spartathlon. Mama Cindy does it. So there was so much involved. And, my mom is a wealth. I wish I could have her on. I wish she could write a book. A lot of people go out and do crazy stuff or ask me for some advice. I always get my mom on the phone and people are just floored. My mom's 75, 76 now, and she is amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, to think that, how far is that from one side to one coast to the other? How many miles is that?
My run was 3,063 miles. Yeah, it was a long way.
And again, this is why this show is important. There's somebody right now struggling with this. Yeah. Whatever it is, it could be your eyesight. It could be, God forbid, a terminal illness. It could be something that could be terminal. I think what I'm getting out of this, and you're inspiring me, we all have our struggles, is that you found a way to feel, and you're still doing it today, to feel alive again, right? Yeah. I could feel that from you.
We all, I get on these podcasts, I tell this story. It's not easy for me to do this because it rips off the scab, and I'm not immune to emotions. I'm terrified of the dark. I still have light perception. I can't see what your face is. I can see what there's movement and stuff. I look like I can see, but I can't. Like I go to the eye doctor and they're, you can't see anything. I'm like, get your hand out of my face. I see fine enough to, see what you're doing.
Yeah.
But what I've learned in this and in life and doing this speaking and putting out my story is everybody has a struggle. Mine's more obvious because I have a cane and walk around, but everybody has a struggle. There's divorce, there's cancer, there's dyslexia, there's there's a gazillion different things. We all have it. We all have adversity and adverse circumstances. The thing that I've learned with these situations is it is a choice. It is, attitude. You've heard it a gazillion times, but making a choice for what type of attitude we're going to have, it can happen in the snap of a finger. And that's the difference between spiraling or climbing and moving onward. And I can't express that enough, because to me, growing up, I always saw this eye disease as my biggest curse, like my nemesis. And I wouldn't talk about it. I had horrible circumstances, and I just tried to grieve it by myself for like over 3 decades, and it didn't work. And then finally, I, quote, came out of the closet. I started telling people I can't see. I had to stop driving. I had to start telling people like I'm like legally blind. Like, I don't know what you look like. I've never known what you look like. Oh, and wow. People they're like floored. And then as I talk about my life, I'm like being my real self. Like before I was, but I wasn't. I was an imposter. I was parading like a different person. I had shame that was causing me to not be my authentic self. Now I learned that. And the thing that I learned, Luis, was what I thought for over 4 decades was my biggest curse actually has become my biggest blessing, because I'm an extrovert, in case you can't tell. I love people. I love connecting with people. And by virtue of having this thing that has just, hit me like a cannonball and have to deal with it and then talk about it, I've been given the biggest gift, which is an opportunity to connect with people as they're going through different things and share stories and walk side by side and share space with people as they journey on. Because we are the thing that we realize, or we don't realize, but we realize later on, is we've all overcome adversity. When I talk to somebody who's going through something big, it's like the biggest thing at this moment, this snapshot in time. But when we talk a little bit deeper about life, we're like, well, you've gone through what other things have you gone through in life? Well, I've overcome homelessness. I've overcome, dropping out of school. And then I went and got my GED, and I went and got, degrees, whatever. There's a lot of different things. So that's the thing that people don't realize, that the process of overcoming adversity is the same. And we exercise that as human beings all of the time throughout our life. But for some reason, we tend to diminish our past successes or our past accomplishments where we have overcome that adversity. And we need to be reminded a lot of times. And, that's a lot of the individual personalized conversations I get a chance to have. And that has been super special to me, because like I said, I get a chance to connect. And I got to tell you, Luis, if I wasn't some blind guy who ran across the US, I probably wouldn't have this opportunity. There's over 300 people in history that I've ran across, and I'm the only one out on the speaking circuit. So wow. I don't know. My curse is my greatest blessing.
Yeah. And again, I think this is why this podcast, and for you to go out and tell your story, whether Forbes, all the news, the agencies that have interviewed you, whether it's your documentary, your story needs to be told everywhere, all the time. So because somebody needs to hear this, whether they're on the East Coast, whether they're on the other side of the world, because they're struggling. We're all struggling, including myself, and it's just powerful, man. It's so powerful. It's just amazing to me. Like when I saw your story, I know we were connected through a mutual friend, and I looked you up and I said, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Just simply amazing. But let's talk about that a little bit more. The running aspect of it, right? Because I said it 100 times on the podcast today. A lot of us would never even attempt to run across the United States. But how do you train for this?
Yeah. So my strategy and training was to try to put myself through as much suffering as I could come up with. Mm-hmm. And because I knew whatever I would encounter, when I was out there would be worse than whatever I could put myself through in training. So I hate the dark. I trained in the dark through the night. I trained on asphalt and on concrete, the hardest surfaces that I could get on, because I knew my body, I needed to develop bone density. Mm-hmm. I ran as many miles as I could. When I first started in this 18-month training cycle, I was about 30, 40 miles a week. At the end of that 18-month training cycle, my longest training week was 300 miles a week. Wow. And I thought I was going to die. I mean, I was laid up. It took me probably like a week and a half to recover. I still did some running, but not like day after day. On the run, I was expecting 350 miles a week. I didn't know how my body was going to do it, Luis. Mm-hmm. And I put myself through intense suffering. I mean, I ran this bad water race in the desert. I trained for that. It was in the summer in Colorado. It would be like 100 sometimes. I would have 2 down coats, wool hat, wool gloves, everything black, 3 pairs of sweats. And I would sit out the pool with my kids and just bake. And all my neighbors are like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I got to run this race. It's going to be 120 and I'm going to be running. And I'm just going to sit out here for 6 hours and cook and not try to take hydration in and just suffer." That was my whole training, was to suffer as much as I could. And I went through serious suffering. And, true to my theory, when I got out there and I started running, it was harder than anything that I had ever put myself through. The pain was more intense. But the interesting with pain that I learned was, we always hear pain is temporary, which is true. And pain plateaus. I talked to some other people who had done the run before, a guy by the name of Marshall Ulrich. He actually logged the 3rd fastest crossing, amazing man. And he told me when I was going out, he said, "Jason, there's going to be a 2-week time period that is the break-in period." And that's basically, the pain will continue to crescendo. You think it's not going to stop. You're at times you may think you're going to die, like it could kill you, but it will plateau. And true to what Marsh said, it did plateau. And my body, I just became accustomed and adapted to that level of pain, and I continued on. So anyway,
that's amazing. And so when you're in the moment, so you're in the moment, I'm sure, because I like I told you in the pre-show, I do some cycling. I was running. I did my last month in the Navy. I retired as a reservist. I did 7 years active, but my last year, my 21st year, I dedicated, my last mission was in Florida, mind you. It was great. It was like 30 days in Florida. I was like, this is the best way to go out. I did a 5K every day. And, and I wasn't a big runner. I was running with my girlfriend. She got me into running, and we would run 2 miles, in the morning time before work, and I said to myself, you know what? And I used to put out motivational videos, and I said, you know what? I'm going to do a 5K every day just to finish this and show people that I came into the military. I served our country, and I came in strong, and I'm going to leave strong, and I did it. And I wanted to quit. Like the 15th day, I'm like, I don't know if I can do a 5K every day. So I assume, and I'm asking you, at what point did you stop thinking you couldn't do it? At some point, did you say, am I really going to do this halfway or a quarter? Like, how did that go down? Your mind.
First thing, thank you for your service, Luis. Freedom isn't free. So I know that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Second, to follow up, how did you do it? Or did I think I was going to quit? Yeah. Look, in that 18 months leading up to it, every day I wanted to quit. On that 2 months on the road, when I was actually putting the feet to the pavement, multiple times a day, I wanted to quit. But like I said, this was a run for survival. My eyesight had gotten to a point where I did not know how I could go on continuing to lose it. I didn't know if I wanted to go on. And I had this calling from outside, from something higher, from God, if you will. Yeah. And when I accepted that, it was a transformational point in my life, because up until that point, I had lived life really for myself. Like, I had worked jobs, been a lawyer, business guy. I tried to get bigger jobs, higher paying jobs, accumulate things, take care of my kids, my family, my community. But it was kind of Darwinian, like everybody else. You kind of got to fend for yourself. I could do so much, but I can't do it all. Well, this was the first time this had nothing to do with me. This was something else that was telling me, you're going to do this and you don't want to. And I had to leave my kids for 2 months. Wow. I didn't work for 18 months. There's no income coming in. People die trying to cross the US, and I was going to do this with my little tunnel. And I knew that. And Marshall, when I talked to him, he told me that too. And he warned me, and he said, I just about got killed, and you're going to be doing this like that. You're a grown man. You need to make a good decision, Jason. And, that was terrifying. Mm-hmm. So the point of carrying on, that the other thing that I learned after this whole thing happened and went down, and I reflected on it, like after a year and in the writing of my first book, I came back with 4 principles that became so clear with every day, with every thought, with every moment, really, of that bringing me back, or resilience and not quitting. And there's 4 what I call pillars of mental strength, or the 4 things that kept me going in the game, which was hope, patience, consistency, and forgiveness. Mm-hmm. And hope, that's like at the forefront of it, which is akin to faith, and basically believing in something which seems impossible. Believing that something can be done when it hasn't been proven, there's no evidence. Believing some blind guy with skinny legs, middle-aged, with his 70-year-old mom and some sag wagon is going to be able to get across from coast to coast and survive. Yeah. But you have to believe. You have to believe it into existence. And I know, I've heard about the new age. Yeah, I'm going to manifest this. Well, I guess some people could call this manifestation, but it is, you have to believe, and you cannot let a crack in, because if you let a crack in, that's the enemy. It's the darkness, and it will shut you down. And that's it. You have to stay there in hope. Patience when the shit hits. Sorry about that. Oh, when it hits the fan,
really here.
When it hits the fan, you got to be calm. Like, what I tell people is, like, in that run and in life, there are storms, sometimes an hour, 3 hours, a day, 3 days. But what's the truth about storms? They pass you by.
Amazing. Yeah.
And when you're in that storm, you hunker down, you slow down, but you keep making progress. And with patience, blue skies will eventually come out, and then you'll start running again. And that's true with life. We always have setbacks. The stock market has a downturn. Guess what? It's going to come back, folks, and then we'll be running again. There's always setbacks. You can always make a comeback. Consistency is a third tenet, which that's critical for me. Relentless forward progress. That was my moniker was Relentless Romero, and that I took to heart, because I was like, I will be relentless in this. Like, I can get hit by a tsunami. I will get up. I will start going again. You just have to relentlessly and consistently make progress towards your goal on a daily basis. And that I've learned in business, in relationships, in athletics. If every day I'm picking up piano, I have a piano in the background, mm-hmm. and every day I'm playing that thing. But if you consistently make effort towards your goals, you will achieve consistent results. Inconsistent effort, you experience inconsistent results. And that's something that we all experience in life. It's, that's in business. We call that operational excellence. You got every day, you got to grind, you got to attend to those details, make that consistent progress. And that's about, discipline, rigor, work ethic. Thanks, Mama Cindy. But, those are critical. And then the final one is forgiveness. And that was huge. That's like kind of like the, mystical, metaphysical, whatever, foo-foo, but it's really, really powerful, because the thing I learned is we all walk around with extra burden, extra baggage we don't need to carry. And I definitely did. For the first half of this thing, I carried all this baggage. And for, 8 to 15 hours a day, I was in my own head. I was in isolation. I wasn't around people. At the beginning, people knew I was started, but then once I started going, everybody goes on about their lives. And I'm like, stranded on a deserted island trying to get across and survive. I was like reduced to primal instinct. I ate, drank, and ran, and that was it. Yeah. And with forgiveness, when I first started out, you go through your life story, and I'm like, oh, wow, this is great. I really got here. That lasted a day. And then the pity party began. And I was like, well, it kind of stunk that I lost that job, or that relationship failed, or why did I have to go blind? Or, why did this circumstance have to happen to me? And I became the victim, right? And then it got really real. And I started looking at myself. I'm like, wow, Jason, you're not innocent either. You've hurt other people. And I've done things I'm ashamed of, and I wish I never would have done. And I've never forgiven myself for that. And, that's like when the layers of the onion get really peeled back and I'm just staring with myself. I'm like, wow, how do I really feel about myself? And because of my faith, I was able to forgive myself because with my faith, I have been forgiven. And I'm like, wow, if my God has already forgiven me, why am I trying to not forgive myself? That's ridiculous. Who am I? Am I bigger than God? No. So I consciously said, I forgive myself. Man. And it was incredible. It took me like 1,500 miles to get to that point. And I remember because I had a GoPro and I used to record myself in the afternoon so I could show my kids, how I started in the morning, how I ended in the afternoon. And on this day, it was about forgiveness. And it was like everything had been lifted. And I realized when I forgave myself, I was able to start unloading that baggage with all these other folks that had victimized me. And it started with my father, leaving and all this stuff in this, baggage I carried with him. So, hope, patience, consistency, forgiveness. I lean on those whenever I get into a point where I'm like, I don't think I can go on, or I'm going to quit. That's in my grab bag. That's in my toolkit.
Just amazing. And thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of miles later, you have become this inspiration, along with your team, your mom, and everybody that's been with you, for many people that need it, and need to hear it, need to see it. This is why, I said this, and I was thinking about this, and I say this all the time. There's a reason why I wanted to get to the high schools and to the middle schools, and tell my story. The story of humble beginnings, the story of two parents that came here from Puerto Rico, that they wanted a better life for their kids. And the reason I wanted to do that is because there's a kid in that high school, there's a kid in that assembly that has my story, similar, and that is going to struggle the same way I struggled. And if they can see that even through all that adversity, even through the things that we make bigger than what they really are as a kid, and even as an adult, you get through it and look at this person in front of you. They have not essentially made it per se, but they survived it. And that's the same thing with you, but just on a super larger scale. It's just tremendously amazing. And so I commend you on that. So you mentioned your book. Love it. Love the title, Running into the Dark. And you said those pillars are in the book.
Yeah. Well, they're in the book, and then they're part of my second book, which is called The Success Cycle.
Like you're doing it on a nationwide scale, as far as trying to reach people that might be suffering with the same, issue you have with your eyes, or even something bigger or something similar, and I commend you on that, man.
Well, I commend you, Luiz, because what you just said is paramount to what I try to do on a daily basis, or when I do get up on stage. I started out speaking. I didn't just go to main stage keynote speaker. Mm-hmm. I started in schools, at Kiwanis Club, the Optimus clubs, anywhere. Somebody once told me, if you're a speaker, you got to speak. You may not get paid. You go free to fee. Yeah. And that's what I did. And that's what I learned. What I realized in schools was there is so much hurt and struggle in our schools these days. And, teachers are, even after COVID, it's gotten worse, but there's so much hurt and struggle in these schools. We got to get in there. And what I realized when I got up and told my story, I walked in, I'm a jovial guy. I walk in kind of, look like this middle-aged guy, like, who is this goofball? But when you get up there and you tell your authentic story, what kids realize is, oh, there's this adult up on stage. They look all put together, but they went through struggle just like I did. And I got to tell you, it doesn't matter whether they're kids, they're adults, who the audience is. I always get people that come up to me afterward. And because I tell my story in a vulnerable and authentic way, they feel compelled to share theirs with me. And I get stories of, grown adults, professionals. I'm at a C-level retreat and people come up to me, I've never told anybody this, but I was homeless for 5 years of my childhood. And I don't know, and this person is like, decked out, like super handsome, should be like a GQ model. Yeah. And they're sitting there telling me, but those are the important stories that need to be told, because just like you said, we all walk around in this facade, and especially in this country, vulnerability and authenticity, it's talked about, they're words that are thrown around, but how often do you truly get to know somebody? How often when we meet somebody at a cocktail party, the first 5 minutes we ask, what do you do? We're sizing somebody up, or it's just, we're not great at conversation. We throw that thing out there. How about if we throw out a question like, what are you struggling with the most right now? And how can I do something to help you? Even if it's inconvenient to me right now. How often do we get to that question or that level within the first 5 minutes of conversation? That's what I'm talking about. If we are being our true, authentic, and vulnerable selves, that's the conversation that we can have. What I realized, Luis, is by doing the work that I do and doing these talks, those conversations, I'm able to have that conversation. And, the first time I gave one of these talks, I remember I got off that stage. I called one of my best friends. I was like, I hate that. People said they liked it, but I hate it. I don't feel good. And my friend told me, being vulnerable is one of the scariest things that you will do, Jason, but it gives other people permission to be vulnerable. And I've taken that to heart. When I get up there, I don't enjoy public speaking. I'm like anybody else. You get me up on a stage, I'm in front of like thousands of people. Good thing is I can't see. So I'm like, looking at black, like a light beam shining at me. But being authentic and vulnerable, it is hard. But by doing it and doing it multiple times, I've realized I have connections with people I give a 30 or 40 minute monologue, and I am able to connect with people for a lifetime, Luis. Yeah. It is absolutely incredible. And think about that when you're in a dialogue with somebody. If two people are truly authentic and vulnerable, a lifelong connection can be made in 5 minutes. But we got to be comfortable with doing that. And the way we're comfortable with doing that is exposing our pimples. One of the things that, when I go to schools, one of my slides is I talk about my shame, and I put the word shame up on the screen. And then I click a button, and I always say the way for me out of shame was by changing one letter. And I changed that M to an R. Shame became share. When I shared my shame, it was released and I was able to connect. I became vulnerable. I trusted other people, and that is the pathway to connection. And frankly, if we can do that all the time, every day with people, that's the way we're supposed to live. That's a rich life. That's a life where we can make moments with other people. My theory has always been life is a series of moments strung together by time, Yeah. And when we connect with other people, those are moments. We remember those moments. What happens in between those connections, it kind of goes away. But when we connect, like what you and I are doing right now, I will remember this for the rest of my life because I feel something like I'm feeling. And, that's what's special is this connection.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know. I don't remember who said this, but they said when it pertaining to public speaking and obviously doing what you love to do, they said, when you care about the people you're speaking to, it actually becomes easier because you're caring. It's more about them. You want to tell your story, but you want to tell them so that they can be inspired and maybe they can connect with you. So if you care about the people you're talking to, and in that moment, and so that made it easier for me too. I mean, obviously I told you in the pre-show, I did run for public office. That kind of puts you in the forefront with town halls and the news and the media and debates and all those things. And so I was scared every day, but I cared about the things I wanted to put forward. I cared about the people. Like I told you, I got in front of the high school kids and I wanted to tell my story because I care about them. I want them to not have the, maybe not have the same struggles as me, in their 20s, and not make the same mistakes that I made. And then obviously give them some of the tools, some of the advice that I wish I had, for instance, thinking about a lot of thinking, we don't do that enough. I told them, I said, at nighttime, just stop for 5 minutes, picture yourself where you want to be, picture yourself in that moment. Why? Because we live these fast lives. And before you know it, you're not thinking about the career that you want to do. You're not thinking about the entrepreneurship or the business. You're not thinking about maybe joining the military. You're not thinking about your grades. You're just moving at 100 miles an hour. And if you can put yourself in that moment, for a little bit, it keeps you somewhat or a little bit better focused. So not only just telling my story, but kind of giving them some advice of some of the things that helped me. And we've all done it. You know, I'm sure that when you were doing the 3,000-mile run, you pictured yourself at the end, and it might have, you know, gave you a little bit like, oh, I can't wait till I get this. I'm going to cross that finish line. And at times that probably kept you going.
Yeah. Well, kind of like what you said, and I want to go back because I love what you said. You need to get back there and do what you're doing, because there's two things that strike me about what you said. One is you're not putting yourself at the center. Like, you know, sometimes people get caught, you know, they do something and they get caught up on this, you know, ego thing. It's not about that. Like you said, you know, my prayer always is when I tell the story is, don't let me be at the center. This is not some Jason thing, because like I said at the beginning, I didn't do this. It takes a village, and there's something much larger that's going on there. But that is critical, and I commend you for that. I think it's so special when people do that, because you care about who you're working with, man. And you know what's critical in that too is what I always make a distinction with the word care, because to me, when we care about something, it's going to drive us into action. If we're just sitting here, you know, talking about something and we don't care, we're not going to take action. I call that curiosity. To me, curiosity has no place in my life. If I'm going to ask somebody to get involved in somebody's life, I have to be driven to action to somehow do something to help them. And you know what that means? That means even when it's not convenient for me. Like, you know, I don't need friends of convenience who will help me when it's convenient for them, because frankly, the downs in life don't happen when it's convenient for everybody. It's not timed that way, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and when we go through it together, that's when we got to pull together and pull through. And I love what you're doing, and I hope you run for mayor again, man. I'm gonna be out in town and vote for you.
Well, hey, I mean, we'll see what happens. That's now in the background, and then there's other things I'm trying to work on. But real quick, so let's get to this. I only have a couple more questions, but I want to get to this community, because I think a lot of times, whether it's the vision impaired community or the deaf community, and I'm just being frank, they get forgotten. And obviously, you know, that's wrong. I think we need to really, really include our deaf and disabled community in a lot of things. And we're trying to do it here locally on you know, even in the summer camps for the kids and things like that, where, you know, the police department is working on something for disabled children that they can actually be part of a summer camp. And we've worked with the deaf community, but let's get to your community, the visually impaired community. If somebody wanted to get involved in running or some type of sport or something, what advice would you give to them? Because it is a scary thing. I mean, you know, especially those that actually weren't born that way. You know, they in your situation where they kind of lost it gradually or they lost it suddenly. What advice would you give to your community?
So there are a lot of adaptive sports communities for the blind and visually impaired. Achilles International is one that is global. They have different chapters in different cities around the world, a lot in the US, and they have weekly meetups. So if people are running or doing triathlons, or you want to do cycling, they do tandem cycling too. You go there and they match you up with a guide, and then you basically work with this group. There's a whole community. There's another organization called the US Association of Blind Athletes, which I'm a member of. They hold, marathon championships. They have goalball, they have beat ball, they have blind soccer. They work with Paralympic sports for the blind and visually impaired. There's another nonprofit that's called United in Stride, and unitedinstride.com. There you register yourself as a blind athlete, and there are guides that have registered in this. It's kind of like dating, but for a guide and a blind runner or a blind athlete, That's cool. When this guides get matched up with athletes in a certain area. So I'm in Denver, and if there's different guides that are coming into town, I may get an email saying, "Hey, Jason, I'm in town. I'm going for a run. I'd love to guide an athlete. Are you up for a run? What distance? What pace do you do?" and they reach out to me. So there are organizations like that. The other thing, there are adaptive programs all over. Here in Colorado, we have a ton. National Sports Center for the Disabled, which is out of Winter Park. All of our ski resorts have adaptive programs. I've spoke to different adaptive programs, Northwest Adaptive in the Northwest US. In the East Coast, there's tons of adaptive programs. So you just get on a Google search and look for, adaptive sports for blind and visually impaired athletes. They're all over the place. They could also, hunt me down and I will help, bird dog for them. You can get me at jasonromero.net. I have a contact place there. And,
awesome.
Knock yourself out. I'll get them connected.
And again, that goes for the non-visually impaired community, to help, our visually impaired community. And then, obviously we work together. Like, that's just amazing that you would get an email and somebody would, it's just a beautiful thing. It's just beautiful, wonderful. So this is a question that I ask all my guests. And when you have two more questions. So, this question is important to me because at 19 was kind of my turning point as well. It was one of those moments, like you mentioned earlier, that I kind of, if I would have turned right, I probably wouldn't be sitting here today with you. So it's a very important question. But if you had one piece of advice or some advice, knowing everything you know now, everything, and you could give it to your 19-year-old self, what would it be?
Hope. One word. And, hope is something that we have control over. It's a decision. There's multiple levels of that answer, but it is never losing faith. Mm-hmm. And, if you have the faith of a mustard seed, you can move a mountain. And that's, if you have the faith of a mustard seed, you can run your blind butt across the United States at 51.5 miles a day. And that's it. If you have faith in your child and that they can accomplish and become their best selves, and that's what you tell them day after day, and that's what you exhibit day after day, that is what will be. You have hope, man. And sometimes people ask me, I've always believed in simplifying things, and if I could simplify a concept down to one word, what would that be? And sometimes I'm asked, what is your purpose? And that one word is love. And that's all that I try to do right now. And it is basically, love my neighbor, love my kid, love my earth, love myself, love this planet, love this universe. But it is truly about love. If I can, when I wake up in the morning, I want to know that when my head hits that pillow at night, I have loved relentlessly. Right now I'm giving you everything I have, Luis. I'm not thinking about other stuff. Yeah. Everything I have is here. Sorry for my attention deficit stuff. I'm sure I have alphabet soup. I know I'm obsessive. I'm compulsive. I'm hyperactive. But all that stuff comes in to make me beautiful. They're not, and I always say they're not disorders. They're gifts. And guess what? It's enabled me to be who I am. I'm cool being the alphabet soup that I am.
We're the same.
Yeah. Oh, really?
I'm the same, brother. I'm the same. Oh. I love it, man. So there you go. There's a 19-year-old Jason Romero right now that needed to hear that. Yeah. They needed to hear that you just got to have hope, man. You got to have a hope that things are going to get better, that you can still live that powerful story. And, I mentioned this today in a post I shared because there's some issues going on all over the country with our young people. And I always go back to our young people. I know adults are going through it too. But it's okay to be the lone wolf and to want to live a powerful story. We're seeing a lot of young people just not having hope, not wanting to be alone, wanting to be with other kids, maybe a group that's negative or doing things in the community. But have hope, that you can live a powerful story. And that's just perfect. That's why I love the question. And I know a lot of other podcasters do it. They ask the similar questions, but every time it just amazes me. And I ask it because, again, there's a Luis Garcia, there's a Jason Romero, there's, a young kid right now that's going to watch this and be inspired by that. And so I love it. I love it.
One thing that you said as a follow-up, when you're setting out to do something for the first time, or you're breaking stride with the herd, you're being a pioneer. You're setting out to be unconventional. I mean, think about that. When you're that 19-year-old kid and you have a big dream and you're setting out and your family's like, no, you're supposed to do this, but you break stride and you go that way. You're a pioneer. You're an outcast. You're living an unconventional existence. You're going to get criticism. It's lonely to be a pioneer. It is absolutely lonely. But let me tell you what, 10 years afterward, once you've accomplished things along the way, all those critics come along like, oh my gosh, how did you do that? And the retort is, remember when you told me I was stupid?
Yeah.
Yeah. When I was crazy to go after my dream.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. And we were talking about this in the pre-show. You know, I say this all the time. It takes 10 years to become an overnight sensation. I'm like 6 years into my speaking career. I haven't even like peaked. And you know, one plug I do want to put like along that is my second book. It's called The Success Cycle.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, the first book is, you know, this guy. I keep these by me on my desk all the time because sometimes I just look. I'm like,
show that again. Show that again. I want to see it.
This one.
I love the cover, man. That's beautiful.
Running into the dark. But this one is about like it's a memoir on like the what happened, and then this one came about, you know, how it happens. This is like how you overcome adversity, and this one is dedicated.
They're on Amazon, right?
Yeah, both are on Amazon, you know, local bookstores, whatever. You can, you know, order them off of Walmart or Target, Barnes and Noble, stuff like that. But the second one, The Success Cycle, in my dedication, I put this one, you know, to the pioneers, the dreamers, the outcasts.
I'm getting the book.
And that is why I put this, because it is so lonely to go out there. I remember, you know, I was a lawyer and everybody's like, you know, I'm doing good. And I'm like, I hate this. I'm miserable. I hate fighting. And I left. I'm like, I'm not going to be a lawyer anymore. I'm going to go do this business career. And all my lawyer friends, judges, you know, family, they're like, you're insane. You're throwing away 10 years of your life. Guess what? Another 10 years after I joined GE, 10 years later, I'm the general manager of GE Capital, expat assignment, living in Puerto Rico. And all my lawyer friends like, oh my gosh, how did you do that? How did you get a business? I was like, remember? Yeah, and it was the same. It was the same thing with the run across the U.S. Yeah. I had this going away party, and it was surreal, Luis. It was like I was at my funeral. I remember I had friends and family. They would just like stare at me like,
it's like
I don't like.
You're living a movie, man. You're living a movie. You gotta do a movie on Jason Romero. Hollywood needs to come and get this movie because it's just powerful.
They need to get a.
That's the title. Running into the dark. There you go. Yeah. Running into the dark. Are you kidding me? It'll be on Netflix. It'll be everywhere.
Anyway, I appreciate the time. You know, I could go on forever, but I appreciate what you're doing, Luis, and just keep it up, man, because it's a powerful platform. And I appreciate the message you're putting out.
No, absolutely. And so the books can be found on Amazon. We're going to provide all the links. You mentioned your website, right? Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. It's jasonromero.net. And you can get a hold of me. You know, how I make my living now is doing keynote speaking, and I give seminars on overcoming adversity, really on, you know, this book, The Success Cycle. Awesome. So if anybody's interested, need a keynote speaker, or you know, you want more of a workshop type on overcoming adversity, hit me up on jasonromero.net, and I'd be happy to talk to you, help you out.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Just one last question. Any coaching going on? Like, you know, there's, you know, people like even athletes. You ever thought about doing anything like that? Like mental coaching, anything like that? Have you done that? Or?
Yeah. So I do that on an informal basis. I don't charge people for that. Basically, you know, once a year, I take on a project to help somebody do their first 100-mile run.
Oh, wow. And
that's something I've done informally. So, you know, through, you know, a variety of different things. And, you know, this year it was a 22-year-old kid who goes to New York University, and last May before, 50K was the longest run he'd ever done, 31 miles. And he was guiding me. I was doing the New York 100. It's 100 miles around New York City.
Oh, wow.
And he took a 31-mile segment. Poor kid about like went out on his feet.
Yeah.
1 year after that, he said, Jason, I'm going to run a 100-mile race. And so we went through that, and he did the training. And 1 year after that, he ran the Keys 100, and there, you know, there's a 50% DNF rate. You know, people who start don't finish. You run basically from Key Largo to Key West. Wow. Super hot. It's crazy. Kid finished it. Wow. And I saw him just last week in Central Park. He's in his last year at NYU. And next March, he is setting out to cross America on foot.
Wow.
So, those are the type of people that I try to get hooked up with. And, that's the coaching I do. I find Uber drivers, folks, all the time. I have this one Uber driver, we used to got into a talk, and he was telling me about, difficult times he was having. I was sharing my difficult times. And he said he wanted to do this podcast for mental health for men, but he'd had setbacks and different things. I was like, hey man, guess what? I wrote a book exactly on this. Meet me at the park and we're going to walk through this. I'm going to walk and talk you through this process. Gave him a book. Page 143 has the entire process. I'm like, look, we're going through this. So that's the way I do it, man. Like I do it on an informal basis. I'm not a guy who's going to get like on a weekly meeting with people, but if people need help, I'm here to help, and, reach out, contact me. I'm here until I'm in the next life. I'm here, and I'm here to serve and love my fellow human beings. So reach out, please. If I can do anything to help you, your team, your family, your friends, your animals, just let me know. JasonRomero.net.
All right. Relentless Romero, number 29. There you have it, folks. I'm telling you, this episode, we're going to bring you back. We got much more to talk about. I want to talk about Puerto Rico. There's some stuff I want to talk about there. I went to Puerto Rico 2 years ago. Got a cool story on that. So we're going to bring you back. But Jason Romero, we're going to provide all the links, number 29. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jason, for being on our show. And
thanks, Luis. I appreciate it so much.
No problem. Like I always say, stay connected.